Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, aloha mai kako and mahalo nui to everyone for joining us here today as we continue to honor the Indigenous healing journey through our ʻImi Ke Ola Mau webinar series. My name is Lily Noi Kohikawa and I am a population health specialist with Papo'ola Lokahi, focusing on addictions, behavioral mental health, and social justice. So we have just a few housekeeping notes before we go ahead and get started. Today's session will be recorded. Please note as well that we are using the Zoom webinar feature, so this will limit your ability to turn on your camera or unmute. Please feel free to post any questions that you have into the Q&A panel found at the bottom of the Zoom screen throughout the presentation. And we'll leave some time to answer questions and talk story toward the end of today's webinar session. We are also able to allow you to unmute if you have any questions at that time that you want to share verbally. Please feel free as well to utilize the chat, which we'll be monitoring throughout our time today. This training has been approved by the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Division for CSAC, CCS, CPS, CCJP, CSAPA, and social worker continuing education credit hours. Following the webinar, you'll be asked to complete an evaluation. If you could please take a moment to complete this evaluation, it really does help us to improve and expand our programming opportunities. And for those wishing to claim continuing education credit, the evaluation will connect you to the attendance verification form. And then upon completion of that form, you'll receive an email certifying your attendance and credit hours. And that will serve as your credit letter for licensure. The link will also be sent to you in a follow-up email via Zoom in case you miss it at the end. Mahalo again to everyone for joining us on this journey. The goal of this series is really to improve our pilina, our connections all across Hawaii. And it has been our hope that through education and outreach, we can really embark on a new way to strengthen these pilina, creating an upena, right, a net of these connected services throughout Hawaii in service to our lahui. So mahalo nui to all of you for joining us on this journey as we continue to revisit the rich lineage of our kupuna, our elder wisdom in this field as we set intention and learn skills for our continued work, and as well as uplifting the work that is being done by organizations that are providing culturally grounded approaches in the field of addictions. And today, one moment. So today it is my honor to introduce today's speaker, Kateri Coyhis, who has been an incredible source of learning and healing for me. And I am so incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to be mentored by her through the SAFE Project Collegiate Recovery Leadership Academy several years ago. And then as well to have had ongoing opportunities to work with her and to learn from the inspiring work that her and her father have brought to Indigenous people. Kateri Coyhis is of the Mohican Nation. She is the Executive Director of White Bison in Colorado Springs. White Bison is an American Indian nonprofit corporation dedicated to creating and sustaining a grassroots Wellbriety movement that provides culturally based healing to the next 7 generations of Indigenous people. Kateri serves the Wellbriety movement by providing community presentations, webinars, podcasts, and virtual presentations to bring awareness to the programs White Bison offers for individuals, families, and community healing. Kateri is also co-author for a chapter in Radical Psychology called Multicultural and Social Justice Decolonization Initiatives. Kateri received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs.
Hello. Good morning over to you all. Kulamalsi, Kateri Coyhis, and Dinuethe. Niakma Ekanu. Hello, my name is Kateri Coyhis, and I'm from the Mohican Nation. I am currently serving as the Executive Director of White Bison here in Colorado Springs. And my apologies for being on here a little bit late. I got attacked on 3 fronts, you guys, and you would think in this day and age with all these Zoom, it would be seamless and flawless, right? But then just the moment you need it to work, your computer, your computer's not working, your internet is crashing, you have to hurry up and set up your backup laptop and get your PowerPoint over there. So it's been a day, you guys. It's been a day, and a Monday at that. So welcome to my Monday. Thank you for letting me join you all. I'm really honored to be here, to be invited back. I think that some of you have heard me speak and share before, and I think that, you know, for some of you, this might be your first introduction to Wellbriety. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm gonna try and share my screen here on my backup laptop. All right, can you see it all right?
Yes.
Okay. When am I? All right, we're in business. Thank you for your patience. I've been connecting with Lily Noy for a number of years now, actually. We met a few years ago at the Safe Academy Leadership Project when she was doing some things around collegiate recovery. That was my first introduction to her and, you know, all the wonderful things that she's been doing in the community, and, you know, being able to get connected with some of you here. So she asked me to come and present about the Wellbriety Movement and the Healing Forest model. It's on the process for community change. So just to tell you guys a little bit of background, I've been involved with this organization for about 20 years, coming up on 20 years now, and this Wellbriety Movement literally saved my life, and saved me and helped get me going on my path to recovery. So I am a person in long-term recovery, and for me, that means I haven't used alcohol or drugs since April 7th, 2012. Because of that, you know, I get the honor of serving for the very organization that saved my life, and because of that and my recovery, I get the honor of being a mother and a partner and a, you know, friend, daughter, sister, all these wonderful things that I get to do and contribute in my life. So this Wellbriety Movement is really important to me, and I've seen it reconnect families. I've seen it save lives. I've seen it do a whole lot. I've literally seen it help every person that has ever encountered it, including myself. So our mission here at White Bison is a sustainable grassroots Wellbriety movement that provides culturally based healing for the next 7 generations of Indigenous people. We were founded in 1988, and we're based here out of Colorado Springs, but we actually work all throughout the US and Canada. And then because of the pandemic, we had a not so gentle nudge to move to a virtual platform. So we're also serving communities in Ireland and the UK and Australia and Mexico. For anybody who might not be familiar with Wellbriety, Wellbriety means living a sober lifestyle. It means being balanced mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. It means living a life that's connected to traditional principles, values, natural laws. It's about walking the red road and creating a healing forest. And so a long time ago, we were taught that there is a physical world that you can see, and that there's a spiritual world that you cannot see, and that those are interconnected. And we got all of our teachings from nature, you know, from the earth. And this was the source of our culture, these teachings that we would get. And so a long time ago, our communities used to look like this. So we would have healthy children, healthy youth. We would have healthy men and women, healthy individuals, healthy leadership. And, you know, we knew how to raise our young people to be these healthy adults, and we knew how to raise our families. And from then, you know, our adults would turn into our elders. You know, the elders are the keepers of our knowledge. And so this was based in, you know, this was grounded in healing and spirituality and ceremony and language and in our cultural values and our interconnectedness with each other, right? And then something happened to us, and it took us from a community that looks like this to a community that looks more like this. And so what we started to see and how we have our communities today is that we're starting to see our kids, you know, our little trees, our young people, and what they're doing is they're entering into the court system. And then some of them, unfortunately, we're losing some of them into the spiritual world due to overdoses or accidental death, or in guilt and shame and fear. But what we need to know is the world in which you live in today, you did not create. You did not create this world. It was created for us. And what did it take? You know, how were our communities destroyed? And so what we've found is that many of our communities have experienced various types of historical and intergenerational trauma. And that has been due to the government and mission run boarding schools, residential schools, mission schools. This has been due to, you know, segregation and all of these other things that we have experienced in our communities. And so we focus a lot on the boarding and residential schools, especially because when these children were sent to these schools, they were not allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to practice their culture, their ceremonies in any way. And if they did, they were punished. And so they were forced, their hair was cut. They had to wear, you know, English clothes. They were given English names, forced to speak the English language. And they started to be raised in an atmosphere of abuse, you know, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, all these different kinds of abuse. And so if you imagine that you have a whole generation of kids that were raised up in this type of environment, you know, they didn't get to learn love. They weren't taught that. And so what happened is as they grew up into these adult trees, that's how they raised their children. And then in turn, that's how they raised their children. And it created this legacy of intergenerational and historical trauma. So what is this historical trauma? Well, it's a combination of immense losses and traumatic events that are perpetrated upon an entire culture. And for Indigenous communities, these losses included culture and language and our own land and people due to diseases and war. We lost our way of life, our spirituality, our family structure. You know, we lost that. We lost that knowledge of how to rear our healthy families. And so common findings from studies on intergenerational and historical trauma. This is how people have learned how to cope with their experiences. This was done through an impulse to protect the children from the horror that they experienced in being raised. And so they became silent and they didn't talk about the things that happened to them, or they tried to become invisible. There's a lack of trust. They don't look for attachments. They don't look for those healthy relationships. Rejecting your own background to identify with another group. We saw this a lot, you know, through this forced assimilation. And this was a form of protection because to identify with your own group could mean, could even mean a loss of life. So then some people respond to this through fighting back and protesting, which we've seen a lot of in recent times. But people began to believe that feeling numb, being angry, being self-destructive, self-medicating, all these things that we see today was a normal way to be in the world. This became normal. It is our reality. And this is actually passed down through direct parent-child interactions and through interactions with the extended family and directly with the community as well. Studies have found that the introduction of trauma into the DNA, it actually literally changes the epigenetic discourse of the DNA. And so it is literally handed down to our families. Other things that complicate the healing process is that we have an inability to mourn. Sometimes we have no idea what happened to our family or our loved ones, and we see that today through like missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. A lack of political power, not feeling like you can change anything, so why bother? Not having a sense of hope for the future. A lack of acknowledgement of this trauma by the dominant culture that fuels our feelings of powerlessness and helplessness, because they're not even acknowledging that these things happened in our communities, that we experience these things. And so communities, we know about that through research on Holocaust survivors. We know that from research on the Japanese American internment camps. We know that through slavery. We know that through today, the Central and North American refugees and the family separations that we are seeing. And then more recently, studies on Indigenous people, on our communities. That's becoming a little bit more common knowledge, but there's still a lot of people that don't know the impacts of trauma in our communities. So everything that you are experiencing today is the result of 7 generations ago. And everything that we are doing today will impact the next 7 generations of people. What you're doing today, that has an impact on our future, on our kids. And so what we found is that because of that intergenerational and historical trauma, remember how we talked about having there be like an unseen world? Well, what happened is this trauma that these kids were experiencing, it started manifesting in the physical world. And so it started manifesting as a lot of the issues that we see in our communities today: alcohol, sexual abuse, family violence, unhealthy relationships. This is how it manifested. And so what we found is that we had been looking at treating these symptoms. Alcohol is a symptom, family violence is a symptom. We actually need to go look at treating the root cause, which is this intergenerational and historical trauma. And so what we need to do is we have to understand that there is a connectedness between the trauma and our current social issues, but there's also a connectedness between that and how do we go about healing? How do we go about healing for our families? So this is our current condition. We have missing and murdered women, we have suicides, we have all these different things in our communities. So what I want to know from you today is, do you think that this is something that can be changed? Is it possible to go from a community that looks like this back to a community and our cultural values and interconnectedness with each other? Because we can't keep doing what we're doing and saying what we're saying and expect to see different results. We've tried that. It's not working, and it's time for us to do something different. So we came up with this process for implementing change, and how it starts is with knowledge of what we call the 4 laws of change. So the first law says changes from within. The second law says in order for development to occur, it must be preceded by a vision. The third law says a great learning must occur. And the fourth says you must create a healing forest. So this first law saying changes from within, what that means, all permanent and lasting change. And I'm gonna say it again, all permanent and lasting change. All permanent and lasting change starts on the inside and then works its way out. So what we say through this teaching is that inside every creature, inside every thing, there is the innate knowledge of how to conduct itself. It's like we were born with a blueprint inside. We know, we have the innate knowledge of what it looks like to be a good, healthy human being. So the salmon, they were born with a blueprint inside. They know how to be a good salmon, right? They know how to go up the river and, lay their eggs and all of that. The bear, they were born with a blueprint inside. They know how to be a good bear, right? We don't have all these issues. These bears don't go around, drinking. These bears know how to be good bears. Well, us humans, we were born with that same type of blueprint. So we have this innate knowledge of our own well-being. So we know what to do, and we have a choice to go ahead and do that. And so the teaching says, first you set the goal and then you see. You do not see first. So it's important to create this vision, right? So in order for development to occur, it must be preceded by a vision. This teaching says you move towards and become like that which you think about. So what are you thinking about today? What is your vision for the future? Are you having a vision of healthy families, healthy men, healthy youth, healthy women, healthy leadership? Are you having a vision where you're incorporating your culture into your community and teaching your kids your culture and spirituality? What is your vision? So the third law says a great learning must occur, and that takes place through the whole spectrum of life, from baby to youth to adult to elder. And that takes everybody working together in order to get this great learning, from the individual to the family, to the community and the nation. The fourth law says you must create a healing forest. So what is that? Well, this is called our healing forest model. And so what we say is, this is the vision that we want to hold. We want to have healthy relationships. We want to have healthy leadership. We want to have healthy families, healthy children. And so if you look at it, let's just say that the earth was cut in half like this, right? And so this is above ground, what you can see, and we get our teachings from nature. And so we talk about things like they're trees, right? So if you take this tree of like this healthy young person, right? And you're living in a community that we see today, and you take that tree out of the forest, out of that sick forest, and you take it down to the nursery and you give it all the nutrients and sunshine and all that it needs to be a good healthy tree. And you take that tree after you get it well and you put it back into this sick forest. What's going to happen to that tree? Well, that tree is going to be sick again, right? So we need to actually look at healing more than just the individual. We have to actually create this healing forest. And so we can see, again, that it's grounded in forgiveness and elders' teachings and cultural values and unity. So this is our healthy forest model. So we have to create this through this process of change. So what do we do now? Now what? So now what we need to do is we want to look at instead creating intergenerational healing. So what that is it's a combination of immense healing, community training, and a return to the cultural ways of our people. And how we do that is we bring back our culture, we bring back our stories. We start telling our stories, our creation stories, all these stories that we, knew a long time ago. Our spirituality, our language, rebuilding the family structure, restoring our balance emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Whole person wellness. It goes beyond just being sober. And there are a lot of different ways to begin creating this intergenerational, this healing from intergenerational trauma. And so how we do that is we heal ourselves, right? Because change starts from within. We facilitate recovery efforts in our families, in our communities. We start developing healing spaces in our communities for other people. We start addressing the issues that we have around shame, not being taught to not appreciate who we were born to be, who our ancestors wanted to be, including everyone in the healing process, and then creating that healing forest, because that's part of those 4 laws of change, right? Implementing culturally based approaches at all levels of healing. These are some things that you can do to help create that. Because when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change, and we're trying to do that through creating this healing approach. So we do that through the Wellbriety Movement. And what it is it's actually like a web. It was introduced in 1998, and it's a live force that consists of large numbers of people in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world, that come together, but their interconnectedness through a focus of working on wellness. So what we say is that it's one message, but it's carried by many, many different messengers. And we're in a time of healing right now. So what that looks like, these different messengers are people from our community. You know, we have these different departments, right? We have mental health, we have treatment, we have our schools, we have peer recovery support, we have law enforcement, we have our church or our spiritual support, whatever that looks like. We have our families. We this 5-year strategic change process. We call it a community improvement process, and it's not development, right? Because we're not developing things for you. What we're doing is we're trying to present a process that builds upon the strengths that your community already has. It's a community improvement process. And so what we say is that everything moves in cycles and circles, right? The seasons. And so we look at this because we get our teachings from nature. We look at this as seasons of change. And so this first year is like a springtime, right? So we're building trust. We're trying to figure out what works. We're creating a vision, and I'll go into more detail about the yearly breakdown.
Okay, she's just having a little internet troubles on Monday, right? Like she was saying. But I'm really excited that she's able to share this with all of us, because I think, you know, this is a time when we want to bring these healing supports into our own communities. You know, we, as Indigenous peoples, we want to connect to the ʻAina, right? To show us the ʻAina is already a living, breathing example of a healthy system, and can teach us so much. And so that's one of the things that I've always really loved about what Kateri and her father and what White Bison has been doing, because it's just so incredibly resonant.
Okay, I think we're back. All right. So I don't know what the last part was that you guys heard. I should have a more stable internet connection now, hopefully. But anyway, we wanted to look at these this community improvement process over the course of 5 years. So we do it as a spring, summer, fall, winter, and then going into the next cycle of spring again. So keeping in mind these 4 laws of change, right? The 4 laws of change provides a pathway from moving to a sick forest into a healthy forest that we want to create. And so what we know, so that's one thing that we know, is that we got to use these 4 laws of change. But the other thing that we know is that our culture is prevention, our culture is treatment, our culture is healing. And so throughout this process, this 5-year community improvement process, what we want to do is we want to start with what we call a community readiness. So using the community readiness model that Dr. Pam Jumper Thurman and Dr. Barb Plesta did through the Triethnic Center, I think is when they developed it when they were in Fort Collins. They actually developed a specific Wellbriety community readiness model. And what that's meant to do is it's meant to take about 6 to 8 informed members of the community. That doesn't mean that they have to have degrees or be in all these prestigious positions, right? They're just informed members of the community, meaning people who really know what's going on. And so the purpose of doing this is to look at the level of readiness for the community to accept change. And the purpose of doing this is to help look at what we call raising the fog, right? Because our communities are like in a fog right now. That's what it is. And so as we begin to learn and educate and do all of these different things through this community readiness process, what we start doing is we start raising consciousness in our communities. We start lifting this fog. And what we found is that consciousness and readiness are something that actually raise together. So as we go through and evaluate the level of readiness in our communities, level 1 being no awareness on different, on 6 different dimensions. So we look at community efforts, we look at community knowledge, we look at leadership, we look at the climate of the community, we look at community knowledge of our issues, and then we look at resources. So level 1 being no awareness, and then 2, denial and resistance, 3 is vague awareness, 4, pre-planning, 5, preparation, 6, initiation, 7, stabilization, 8, confirmation and expansion, and then 9 being a high level of community ownership. So throughout this process, what we do is we do an initial evaluation of community readiness. And so we're able to tell how deep we are in that fog. And as we start to implement this process, we evaluate again. And what we hope to see is that the level of consciousness that this fog has begun to raise, and that the readiness raises with it. So in looking at these different stages, these are stages 1 through 4 of the consciousness of community readiness. And so 1, no awareness, the issues generally not recognized by community leaders as a problem. I think probably if you're like me, you've seen this already. The goal is to raise awareness of the issue. Stage 2 of denial and resistance is at least some community members recognize that it's a concern, but there's little recognition that it might be occurring locally. 3 being a vague awareness. So most people start to feel like there's local concern, but there's not immediate motivation to do anything about it. And I think probably some of you have seen that as well in your own communities. So the goal is to raise awareness so that the community can then do something. 4 is pre-planning. And so there's a clear recognition that something has to be done, and there may even be a group addressing it, but the efforts aren't focused, and that we need to work together for the goal to raise awareness with concrete ideas on how to fix that. So working together being key. 5 is about preparation. So engaging the community in a needs assessment, sponsoring community events, public forums, having webinars where technology fails miserably, but then hopefully they, kind of redeem themselves a little later down the road. The goal is for gathering existing information to initiate more specific activities that you can actually do, and then initiating it under 6. Training community members to conduct these assessments on other topics around bullying, suicide, domestic violence, substance use, identifying the service gaps, finding additional resources and trainings, and then engaging professionals from the community. 7 is about stabilization. And so what we do here is we look at reinforcing project support through community training and gatherings, quarterly meetings, news media, social media networking. The goal here is to stabilize the efforts and programs. 8 is about confirmation and expansion. So what we do is we look at creating formal agreements with programs for specific services, implementing different speakers to come in and speak on different topics of expertise in their area, initiating local policy changes to support wellness. And the goal there is to enhance and expand services and access to services, that you might have. And then 9 is about community ownership. And what that looks like is increasing funding sources, modifying how you implement the project, providing progress reports to key stakeholders like community members, leadership, department heads, continuing to reassess what you need and look at how you can improve. And so the goal here is to keep that momentum going. And so that is why we go through a whole season of change, spring, summer, fall, winter, and then go into the springtime again, because we want to make sure that the community is able to maintain that momentum. And so we look at implementing different wellness strategies. So what we do is, these are different wellness strategies that, might not be recognized, I think, by dominant culture, but we look at assessing the community for readiness. We're going to actually be developing a household survey that we're going to disseminate to people that are culturally based and focused on recovery. We provide culturally appropriate education. We look at creating a vision for wellness, which I'll emphasize and elaborate on a little bit in a little bit. Developing a continuum of care. So not just focusing on treatment and recovery, but like what happens afterwards. Creating a recovery lifestyle, creating recovery communities where we're looking at aftercare, family recovery, reuniting families, re-entry from prison for people coming out of the community, helping them with that. Looking at having wraparound services for mental health, and then making everything accessible to people. Implementing environmental policies that support wellness, developing servant and sober leadership, utilizing our own culture, mentoring our youth, celebrating recovery, changing our own attitudes, our own perspectives, right? Because when you start to look at things different, then the things that you look at change, right? And so year one, this is our new beginning, right? It's about getting organized. It's about finding our way. It's about defining what works and what doesn't work. And what we do through this first year is we look at creating a community vision. So we introduce the concepts of Wellbriety and wellness to the community. We look at assessing a level of wellness in the community that's balanced emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. What we do is we look at engaging cultural and spiritual systems of the community in the service of wellness. We do that by creating an elders panel, identifying current cultural strengths that you already have, because this is a community improvement process, improving upon what you already have. Integrating cultural and spiritual practices into wellness. Equipping the community to know how to act. So what we want to do is we are going to be developing a wellness coalition, putting an emphasis on sober leadership, and then creating recovery activists. Not activism as in like the American Indian movement and, you know, politics, recovery activism. Then we design a community-based, culturally relevant wellness plan for the whole community. We define what wellness is for this community. You define it. We don't define it. You define it, because what we do is we train you on how to tap into that innate knowledge. We draw it out of you. We don't tell you what wellness in your community looks like. Identifying strengths and weaknesses, mind mapping needs, and mind mapping resources that you already have. A lot of times when we start doing this, people are actually very surprised at the resources that actually already exist in their community. They just don't know how to bring it together and tap into it. So what we do here is we work on developing a community vision. We come into the community, we do the readiness model first, and then we are able to share the results of the readiness model. And then we work with 3 different aspects of the community. We work with the leadership, we work with the program and department heads, and then we work with the community as a whole to develop their vision for wellness. And from there, what we're able to do is actually create a vision book. This is what you say you want to have in your community, and these are the issues that you want to focus on. So it's a very customized, tailored approach after that. So we talk about, we come back and we present the vision book, and we present on the Healing Forest model. We talk about, based on what you said in your vision, here's what we can do to custom tailor the strategy for your community to focus on the issues that you are seeing. And then evaluation is what we look at doing. So how we do that is we have a bunch of strategies in place, and I won't go over every single one of them, but it's based on a quarterly model. So in the first quarter, we look at engaging the community. We prepare a message for the community. We tell people what we're going to do. We recruit people to help. We have community gatherings and speakers to educate them on what's coming up. And then we look at doing the community readiness model, and then we identify the results, right? And so then what we do is, over the course of the first year, we look at scheduling follow-up community readiness at 6-month intervals. Quarter 2, we look at envisioning a future. So this is where we come in and we identify key people from the community who will help. We call them headman and headwoman. It's like if you are in a powwow, right? You have a headman and a headwoman. They're people that, show by example. Mobilize the community through this visioning process and then develop strategies for wellness based on what you said you want. And then we create that vision book. In quarter 3, we equip the community to actually act and implement the vision. So we do leadership training. We talk about healing from grief and trauma. We implement a recommendation of Wellbriety trainings based on your needs. We come in and we do coalition training. So we train people on how to work together. Year 2 is all about choices, opportunities, communication, collecting data. So this is our summertime, right? We're doing continuing education. I won't go over all of these different strategies, but I am definitely happy to share this PowerPoint so that you all can kind of look at this in more detail in a little bit. But what we look at doing is assessing the level of the community again, and then, engaging, doing an elders panel, providing ongoing capacity and leadership development for the coalition. So how that looks like is we work on, this is a time of what we call opportunity. So the first year it's about survival. This is about opportunities. So we create strategies for making choices and enhancing opportunities for change. So on a quarterly basis, we engage more of the community. We look at having sober events and gatherings, engaging elders. We look at implementing different youth trainings that we have available to bring our youth into the process, expanding on who we're getting involved in this, creating the healing forest. We do the community readiness model again at 6-month intervals so that you can see the progress that your community is making. We review the vision, right? And so we do a lot more coalition training and work to create the future in quarter 2. Then we look at doing trainings for leadership and really engaging the leadership to equip the community to act. And so then we look at milestones and evaluation and celebrations of these milestones that you all are making. In year 3, what we focus on here is we focus on influence. So we start looking at creating strategies for leading change and influencing norms. So you're influencing now, you're influencing who gets involved, you're influencing policy, you're influencing community engagement. And so we look at doing different community trainings, intensifying the recovery messaging, promoting and developing circles and more training. We again look at doing the community readiness so that we can see the progress. Now we look at reviewing the vision again. So we do that to acquire grants and funding, and we help you do that. We look at more coalition development. We look at, in quarter 3, engaging different initiatives for the community, such as what we call the Moose Hide campaign that focuses on domestic violence prevention, or youth getting them more engaged in the community. Electing sober leadership, you're influencing now, right? So you're voting people in who support what you're trying to accomplish. Promoting projects, shaping attitudes, you have social media influence here, and we teach you on how to do all of that. Enriching the Wellbriety infrastructure that you're developing. So we continue getting the families involved. We continue getting more trained facilitators to implement these programs. We get recovery coaches that are trained in a culturally based model. And then we look at how do we examine and change messaging if we need to, and we evaluate progress. And then again, we celebrate those milestones. So then in year 4, what we do is this is a winter time. And sometimes what you see is this is where struggle and conflicts take place. This is where we lose our leaves, right? But what we're actually doing is we're making room for improvement and growth in this year. And this is about mastery. So we're looking at developing strategies for recognizing the progress for the next phase. And so again, we start developing quarterly activities that you can do. But this is based on the vision that you developed. And we can also look at addressing, it again and doing like a new vision to see if that vision has changed at all. So this is what year 4 looks like. And then in year 5, what we actually do is this again is about survival. So you're going into a new cycle of survival, but we look at developing strategies for recognizing your progress and preparing you for what's next. We look at Wellbriety consciousness in the community. Hopefully at this time, what it looks like is the Wellbriety concepts have now been accepted as part of the norms. The community has expectations that they have set for the leadership, and they're getting a sense of what's working. Wellbriety is implemented in the workplace. So that could be through behavioral health, schools, social services, churches, mental health, all these different aspects of the community, and then using that healthy forest to show where the community is heading. Then identifying areas for growth, right? Conflict precedes clarity a lot of times. And so once we get through that winter time, we have a clear idea where we need to go next. So using the community readiness results to establish your progress and to help shape new messages in the community. Looking at the evaluation and data collection that we've done, engaging the coalition that you've developed, and then new community members to identify any new strategies that you might need to do. So here we look at doing that new vision, and setting you up to do the next several years of community improvement. Creating a new vision book, we do that for you. And then again, those expectations for leadership. So what that would look like is leaders of all community agencies, they have an action plan to ensure sober leadership and sustainability of what you've implemented. Leadership actually supports and encourages you to design and implement these wellness models in your work. Leadership identifies behaviors that are no longer acceptable. We start creating new norms here. And so then we look at renewing the coalition. So we invite new members to come on and start engaging more people, and then having the coalition actually implement this new vision, and then, finding funding and things like that for this. Enriching the evaluation. And so we establish new milestones, we create new goals, and we look at how do we evaluate those and how do we show the success and progress that you've made. So what we did is we developed this cultural logic model. And so what it does is it's designed in a way that I guess would be recognized in a Western approach. It shows exactly the things that you are going to be doing through this community improvement process. These are the problems that we're seeing on an individual and family level. These are the problems that we're seeing on a community level. These are the problems that we're seeing in our leadership. These are the cultural resources that we have. These are the cultural activities that we can do. And then these are the milestones. How do we know that it's working, right? These are the milestones that we're looking at. And then these are the actual outcomes. And so we framed all of that to help with applying for funding and getting some more documentation in order to help. So, we have a wide variety of different programs, and I know I'm coming up on the end of my time here, but we have a wide variety of different programs for adults, for youth treatment and recovery, youth prevention. We have family programs now. And some of them are evidence-based already. And so we're looking at developing collegiate recovery toolkit, which is actually almost done. We have a program for re-entry for people coming out of incarceration or treatment. We have programs that focus on healing from grief and trauma. We have We're going to be developing a new program that we're calling Well-Anon. And what it is it's for friends and family members, because it's not just individuals that are impacted by addiction, right? We have to look at involving the whole family in this process and having some kind of program and initiative that people can get healing if they have loved ones that, are engaging in addiction. If you ever want to look at joining us, we have daily Wellbriety meetings that we are able to offer. We do it on Zoom, and we also do it on this platform called intherooms.com. So you're welcome to join us for that. We also have some upcoming projects that I would like to share. So I talked a little bit about the Well-Anon. We're going to be actually developing a youth suicide prevention initiative. We're in the process of finalizing our Wellbriety Life Skills program. We're going to be developing a Wellbriety Technical Assistance Center so we can come in and do this community improvement process. We can do consulting, we can do webinars, we're going to be developing a speakers bureau so people can come in and you can connect to them through the Wellbriety movement and have them be able to showcase their expertise. We're developing the collegiate recovery starter kit so people can start groups in colleges and stuff like that. We have some books and literature. We have a lot of really cool things through our Wellbriety store that you can gain access to, including a daily meditation that we offer for free. You can actually download the app. And then we are very active on social media. So we do monthly themes. Next month is actually about in the spirit of gratitude. So we usually do product promotions. We do a lot of giveaways. We do a lot of daily inspirational messages and things like that. So feel free to connect through us through social media if you're active on there, because we are very active. The other thing that I wanted to address before I invite questions is just that, you might notice that there was no incorporation of specifically like Native Hawaiian culture, right? You might sit there and look at it and go, well, that doesn't relate to us because we didn't see that represented. The reason that it's not represented is because you're the experts on the culture, right? And so what we do is we don't pretend to be the experts on your culture. What we do is we provide a framework. And that framework is designed for you to adapt it to your community, to your culture, to your ceremony, to your language. You implement that specifically from your community. So it's like we designed it to have a core set of principles, laws, values that are universal human teachings, right? They can apply to anybody, but you take it home and you make it your own because they're highly adaptable. We will never come in and say, try and be the experts on, your culture. We will come in and say, here's the framework. How do you want to go about this? Because we're going to tailor it specifically to you. So that being said, I'm definitely open to questions if we have time, comments, anything like that, and I'll turn it back over to Lulinoy for a while.
Mahalo nui, Kateri. Just want to say, a huge mahalo, a huge thank you to you for sharing all of this incredible knowledge with us. It sounds like everybody is really loving all of especially the healing forest. I think that resonates a lot with us. I did want to pose kind of a question to our participants, and just thinking about, now that you've seen a little bit about the Wellbriety movement, about the healing forest model, and about this model or this community readiness model, what does a model of community readiness look like here in Hawaii, and where are we at as a community? I would really love to hear from any of our participants. We did have, and while you're all thinking of that response, we did have one question in the Q&A. Is this program available to implement in various places? I'm working on a project outlining the state of substance use disorder on the rural outer islands of Hawaii. mapping existing or lack thereof treatment services, and then putting together a proposal of what individual communities based on the demographics and SUD needs and what they need the most. A lot of these areas have large Kanaka Maoli or Native Hawaiian populations and would benefit from programs like this. Or would we need to first start this program to train people who could then implement a Native Hawaiian-based model in each of the various communities? That's a long question. Oh, you're upside down.
Oh, goodness. I've never seen that before. Okay.
Defying gravity.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off my video just so it doesn't throw people off. But anyway, yes, this is definitely something that can be implemented in various places. How I see that being is like, let's just say, you know, your communities are widespread and you want to get people though on the same page, that we can come in and do that visioning process with all the people that you want to be involved. So it is definitely doable. We've never done it in a community that's so widespread, but we definitely can do it that way to be bringing in. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to say is, yes, absolutely, the slides can be shared. So I'll make sure to send that over to Lili Noy and she can send those with you. But I saw a comment in here that says, I don't trust the government. This process is actually designed to be what we call a bottoms-up approach. So it's not meant to be implemented from the government or from even the leadership. We want their support, obviously, but we don't always get it. And so what this actually, some of you may be familiar with like the org chart where we see leadership on top and then they go down and they disseminate tasks and responsibilities and all that to managers and then program heads, and then they go on, you know, this design is actually supposed to be coming from the grassroots, coming from the community members, coming from the recovery activists, because this is the only way that we know that we are going to be able to implement meaningful and sustainable change. That this is designed to have servant leadership where we tell the leadership what we want and then they lead us to it sometimes. But sometimes what we have to do is we have to cause some good trouble, right? Good trouble. That's how we talk about recovery activists. It's people who are willing to be movers and shakers in the community, that are willing to say, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable and we're not going to stand for that anymore. And here's what we're going to do instead. We don't need your permission. We're going to do it ourselves, and we're going to find the resources and people that we need to find to implement this process.
Mahalo. Yes, I think that is, yes, something we can all kind of agree on. I think this is a model that we're really interested in. One of the reasons we wanted to bring this webinar is to kind of see how communities are feeling right now, and if something like this would be of interest, you know, and what is the potential out there for us to continue to bring these healing supports into our Native Hawaiian communities. Okay, I'm seeing some more questions. Sorry,
Now, you know, because of this change, I think in service delivery that we've had and moving over to a virtual platform, I just want to point out that not only can we come to your community in person, you know, COVID pending, of course, but we can also do some and or, you know, the majority of this training as a virtual option as well. So sometimes being able to have that virtual option can help speed things up a little bit, which we're very happy to do.
Yeah, I've seen some comments about what it would look like in Hawaii. So mahina phases for the seasonal changes. Lo'i Kalo, fish ponds, ocean life, kumulipo, ahupa'a, all Kanaka lifestyle management practices that we can apply to addressing issues in our community using the Wellbriety frameworks. Yes, mahalo. Cannot rely on government to be sustainable. Yes, must be grassroots and from the communities to address real issues. Yep. I think staying that one big awareness, big awareness season of change slide. Yep. I think it was there too. Yeah. Tom, what is this? This seems like a community-driven model where collectively our communities come together and outline the change we desire, and together we use our strengths to find the answers. So very different than the top-down of Western traditional models that are clearly not working. Yes, mahalo, highly, yeah. We're engaged in the Mauna, like Standing Rock. Yes, 1893, since the overthrow. We know and communicated. Yep. Yes, La Pu'ako'a is this Sunday. Mahalo for that reminder, Tom. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest from our participants here. We had one question come in from Dana. How is this progress shared through the 6 years?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. How is progress shared through the 6 years?
Through the 6th year?
Yeah, actually, Dana, do you want to kind of elaborate on that? I can try to unmute you through the model.
So if I'm getting it, how I think is that, we do years 1 through 5. So during that year 5, what we do is we look at doing another visioning process to see then what are the needs then and what does the community want to do from there. So that is driven through you.
Mahalo. Okay, Dan, I'm gonna put you back. Okay, and then we had another question come in about the slides and recording. Will we be emailed an update? Oh yes, sure. So I'll email you guys the slides. We'll also have the recording up on our Vimeo within about 2 weeks. And I will put that in the chat right now. So this is the link to our Vimeo showcase, and you can actually take a look at all of our other continuing education there as well. But this recording will be up probably sooner than 2 weeks. As soon as I can get it up, I'll get it up and let you all know that it's there along with the slides.
Hopefully there's an opportunity to edit out some of those technology interruptions. So my deepest apologies for those, and I really appreciate your guys' patience and bearing with me and allowing me the opportunity to come and share a little bit about this model, about some of the programs that we have to offer. And, I really hope that, we're able to engage with a lot of you again. And I'm going to put my direct email in the chat. So if you come up with any questions down the road, you're welcome to reach out to me. You are also welcome to reach out to our office to call and inquire about trainings, products, anything that you want to inquire about. We're definitely just here to be of service.
Mahalo. I see, Angela, you have your hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk if you wanted to ask something.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I loved hearing about the very liberal, spiritual, deep and progressive approach to healing community. I truly believe everything you've talked about is all connected, like the trees, soil, the land, war, history, and our social issues. And as our world grows, we realize the error of our ways. That's why a lot of companies nowadays care about ethical practices and animal cruelty, fair trade, child labor. And because we've realized we can't just do whatever we want and say whatever we want because it causes hurt and trauma, which then causes our people to be bad. So yesterday I was a part of a church healing seminar, and I heard the phrase, when we were born into war. And today at this Indigenous healing seminar, I hear the phrase, healing starts from when we are born. And it's not like one is true and one is false. They're both true. There's a duality to it. They're opposites, but they're both true. But what I really wanted to say was, how does the Indigenous framework apply to our community here in Kalihi? So I'm part of a security group here in Kalihi, and we have a lot of crime, homelessness, gang activity, gun violence, illegal game rooms. But one thing I feel like that's really impacted our community in terms of like generational trauma is words of hate and shame. So because I've lived here for a while, I hear it from my grandmas and my granddaughters. And something as a leader in our community, I'm going to implement the framework I learned today is to create an opposite effect. Something our organization does. It's kind of a Christian practice. It's called speaking words of life and words of truth, words of love. So as we gift things in our community, we paint words like laugh, fly, trust, dance, sing, faith, grow, bloom. So yeah, this is something we're just starting. So we'll see if it has any effect, and we'll see if it has any effect in the community. But thank you for the amazing seminar today.
Thank you for sharing all that. That is absolutely beautiful. If anybody's ever interested, there's this really cool video on YouTube by Masaru Emoto, and he talks about it's about water, right? And what they do is they actually put water under a microscope and look at how the water changes when different words are spoken to the water. And it's really powerful. It's called The Messages in the Water, I think. And so it does like a picture of, when you tell the water, I love you, and it shows what the water looks like. And then you introduce the word hate, and it shows how the water actually changes, and they take pictures of it under the microscope. And it's really powerful about, kind of driving home that factor about how like words have power, and our bodies are actually made up of, 2/3 water. So imagine how that's impacting us as human beings when those words are spoken. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, I'm going to look that up. Thanks.
Mahalo, Angela. And just looking at the time, I want to say a huge mahalo nui again to Kateri for sharing this, just all of your incredible work. I think this is just so resonant with our communities, and this is a time for us to take our healing into our communities and really start to build together, right? Working together. And I think there's some incredible strengths in our communities that I've seen and that we've all seen, and finding a way to uplift those strengths and just build stronger bonds between all of us. I'm inspired every time I hear you speak, and I cannot mahalo you enough for sharing all of this with us.
Anushik, thank you. Thank you in my own language for allowing me the opportunity to come share, and please let me know how I can be of service in the future.
Mahalo nui. And everyone, I put into the chat the attendance verification and evaluation form. And if you could let us know on there, if this is something that really interests you and you want to learn more, let us know. Let us know what you think, because we read all of everything you guys write. So please let us know. I mean, that was really a motivator for bringing this opportunity to everyone. I'm going to also put a link to sign up for our mailing list in case you're not on it yet. I also want to share just quickly some additional upcoming events that we have. go. And so we have a save the date. Oh, it's so small, I can't read it. December 2nd for Pale Aina and Pale Bye Bye Pale Ea. So a program of Kokua Kalihi Valley Comprehensive Family Services. I can send some of these flyers out to you folks as well. And then we have some save the dates for our ʻImi ʻike ka koʻo ulu ʻoihana informational workshops, which are December 1st, December 15th, and January 5th. And then as well as our ʻImi ʻike Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship informational workshops, which are January 12th, February 16th, and March 5th. And then we have our Native Americans in Hawaii, past, present, and future. And I already seen Ms. Rosanna in our participant list, along with her mother, Meali'i. And so very excited to have that on January 14th. And I believe that was the last one, yes. Okay. And again, mahalo nui to everyone here, and mahalo nui again to Kateri. And with that, I will just say mahalo and release everyone back into their day. Ahui po.